Welcome to the Wolverine Confidential Podcast. I'm MLive sports writer Andrew Kahn, joined by two of my colleagues.
Ryan Zuke here to talk Michigan softball, baseball, and a little bit of puck.
Aaron McMann, Michigan football beat writer from MLive.
Well, guys, the Michigan softball team has been eliminated from postseason play. Their season is over. Ryan, they lost to Notre Dame in their first one, which you lose your first game in this setting, kind of puts you behind the eight ball right away. They came back and beat Illinois, Chicago, but then lost to Notre Dame and double elimination. They were then out. What went wrong for them?
Well, their bats, they're not consistent at all. They can't score enough runs. I mean, you score one or fewer runs in your last, 5-6 games. I mean, that's hard to win that way. And even though they took a 1-0 lead in the 6th inning, got a sacrifice fly, and you're feeling, all right, I mean, Megan Bobian's on the mound. She's dominated the first 5 innings. They have a pretty good chance at advancing to the regional final. And then sure enough, Notre Dame responds with a leadoff double, single, sac fly, another single, and then all of a sudden Wolverines are down 2-1.
Yeah, I mean, to not make the super regional, which is what they call the next round, is a disappointment for this program. Given
two straight years now too, which is unheard of for this program.
Right. I don't know. They had a 15-game win streak during the year. They had an 18-game win streak, I think, during the year. Still, overall, a good season. It was just like you said, the bats.
Yeah, they went cold at the wrong time. Yeah. And then And Megan Bobian, as dominant as her season was as a freshman pitcher, I mean, I don't know if it was fatigue or what, but she wasn't as sharp down the stretch either. So kind of combine those things together, and it's not conducive to winning ball games.
Right. No, I mean, she was still, she was good enough to win here in the Kentucky regional, but given the bar she had set for.
Yeah, Notre Dame didn't even fare very well against Kentucky. It was the host. Right. I mean, they got blown out both games, and so I mean, even if Michigan did get past Notre Dame, I don't know if they would have beaten Kentucky twice, anyways. But still, yeah.
Now with softball done, there's still baseball to be played though. They are getting ready for the Big Ten tournament.
Big Ten tournament, and it was looking for a lot. They won 20 games in a row. All right, they're going to have a good chance of making the NCAA tournament, and now all of a sudden they get swept by Purdue this weekend. They lost 4 of 5, and now they're on the outside of the bubble for the NCAA tournament. So they need to, I don't want to say have to win the Big Ten tournament to get a bid to the NCAA tournament, but they have to win a lot of games here and probably at least make it to the finals.
Interesting, yeah. Similar stories with both programs, kind of.
What's the road look like for them?
They open up with Iowa on 9 a.m. on Wednesday.
Ooh, early.
So early game.
Okay.
So I mean, when they're hitting well, they're not pitching well. When they're pitching well, they're not hitting well. So you just got to put those two things together. And they just faced Iowa a couple weeks ago. Okay. So I mean, they'll need some wins and then if they do win that, they'll face the winner of Purdue or Ohio State. And obviously, if it's Purdue, they just played each other 3 times in the last week. So
very familiar.
It's all we have for live sports for Michigan this time of year. So we'll hope they can keep it going, keep us entertained for a little longer. Aaron, you were at the Chad Tuff Foundation Gala event on Saturday night. I guess first, if you just tell our listeners and viewers what the event kind of entailed. There was a roast of Lloyd Carr and an auction and things like that.
Yes, there was a Champions for Change Gala. It had an official title. They claimed it was sold out. They do an annual benefit for the Chad Tuff Foundation every spring. This year they worked in a roast of Lloyd Carr. Lloyd volunteered himself to be the subject of the evening, for better or for worse. It wasn't so much a heavy roast. I think they called it an endearing roast.
Okay.
So there were a lot of stories told, a lot of moments shared. Jim Harbaugh, in fact, I don't think he told a single bad thing about Lloyd Carr during his tenure at Michigan. It was all memories and good times. And that was mostly what it was. It was a good evening. It was fun. It was long. But again, they had a silent auction. They had a public auction. They had a lot of things up for bid. They ended up raising $1.26 million for pediatric brain cancer research. So all in all,
in addition to the $30 million.
Correct. The $30 million gift to launch a brain tumor center at the University of Michigan. So there was a good evening, productive evening. I don't think you can't say a bad word about the event. I mean, there were several celebrities on hand, former players. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh was in attendance. So it was a good evening.
Aaron McMann was in attendance.
I was.
A-list celebrity.
They put the media way in the back, the back table. But no, it was a good time. It was nice to see a lot of these folks you don't necessarily see all the time. Jake Long returned to campus. Bray Edwards was here. So it was a good time. Obviously, Lloyd and the Carr family obviously were in attendance, so it was good.
So for those who watch maybe the Comedy Central roasts of the celebrities, this was not that style.
It was not. It was not.
No.
I will say Charles Woodson had some good zingers. It's time. He told the story one time he almost quit and transferred out of Michigan. He was so fed up with Lloyd Carr. I guess Lloyd was badgering him in practice and singling him out in practice, and he finally said, "Coach, I'm out of here." So they ended up having to call his mom, they had Charles' mom get him on the phone and convince him otherwise, talk him off the ledge, so to speak. So there were some interesting stories.
He also had some other interesting comments. I saw
did.
too.
Yeah, we spoke to him before the actual event during the strolling cocktail hour, I guess you could call it. He spoke to media for a short time, 5 to 7 minutes. But one of the topics that was brought up was Ohio State. You know, last month he spoke at University of Michigan's commencement. He guaranteed victory this year over the Buckeyes, and he was asked about it again. And in this case, obviously he backed up what he said, but he went a step further and said he felt like Michigan they haven't put the focus on this week like he feels like they should, and they used to when he was a player. They haven't put an emphasis on it, and he's frustrated about that, and He's made it a point of telling the players, because he spoke to the team the Friday night before the game, the Ohio State game this past fall, and I guess he told the players that same thing, that you need to focus on this game and treat it like it's not another game, because he feels that's what he's felt like the last several years, going back to Rich Rod's era.
Right. Well, let's unpack this here, and we can all weigh in. There's kind of two things to unpack. First of all, is he right in that? You know, is it accurate that the current Michigan players of the last few years aren't taking it seriously? And then I think the second thing would be whether that's the right opinion to have, whether that matters. So the first thing, being someone that's covered the program, would you say that is accurate? I mean, I know it's hard to get inside the hearts and minds of those players. But
I've covered this team, obviously this past season, and I was around for Jim Harbaugh's first year. And I will say one of the things I did notice with this program, whether it came to Ohio State week or even Michigan State week, they don't. At least from a public perspective, they don't seem to put the emphasis on those two opponents. They don't come out and, maybe say that these games are more important than others. And I can remember, Ohio State week last year saying, the players saying that, well, it's another game. We need to win this game. We want to win this game. So from my perspective, they haven't put an emphasis on these two games, or at least Ohio State week. I don't have a ton of experience to draw from, having been on the beat only for a year or two. But no, I definitely get that sense. I do.
I'm sure if you're a Michigan fan, you want to see the team fired up for these games and say, yeah, this does mean everything. Because to the fans, you could say you lose all the games, but you beat Ohio State, and it's a successful
that's
season.
One of the comments Charles Woodson made when he spoke to us. Back when he was a player, they only played 11 regular season games, but he made the comment that we could go 0-10 in the regular season, but if they beat Ohio State, all was good.
Right. So that's the thing. Rich Rodriguez, I remember there were some years there where Michigan was solely trying to play spoiler in that game. They won only 3 games, in one of the seasons, I think 5 in another, and that could salvage your season. And maybe that's fine every 10 or 15 years to have that one that salvages it. But, Ryan, you could speak to some of the teams you cover a little more closely. I'll speak to the men's basketball team with John Beilein. He absolutely does not put a premium on Ohio State or Michigan State. Michigan State's more of the basketball rival. He does not. It kind of irks Tom Izzo a little bit, clearly, because he does. He absolutely puts a premium on playing Michigan. Beilein doesn't, and I guess that's what I'm getting into with that second thing. Is it wrong? Because Beilein's whole thing is like, we want to beat everyone. We want to win as many games as we can, and we want to be peaking in March and win tournament games, win championships. And Harbaugh seems to have a little bit of that where, every game is the Super Bowl. Every game's a championship game. At the end, you want to be undefeated or as close to it as you can and be in the playoffs. And
football is a different animal, though. You only have so many games.
Right.
Basketball is a long season. It's not the end of the world if you lose before then, too.
You got to keep in mind, too, we're not privy to practice. We're not behind the scenes. We're not seeing what's going on. Maybe there is. Maybe Harbaugh does, raise his intensity level that week. I guess I don't know. I will say this from an outside perspective: you don't know, you don't recognize much of a difference. So it's hard to say. It could be one of those things where Michigan has struggled. Obviously, we've gone over this now. Michigan's lost 6 straight and 13 of the last 14 Ohio State. The last thing they want to do, I think, from a public persona, is to come out there and say, well, we're beating Ohio State this year, get ready, we're beating you guys, and then go lay another egg, because then it looks bad from a public perception standpoint. So it could be a case, too, where, Michigan, I don't say is afraid to talk trash, but they don't feel like they're in the right to do it because they haven't been able to beat them.
I'm like, you need to get a win at some point here soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just can't imagine there's a Michigan fan that would be okay with the 0-10 and then beat, or in this case, now 0-11 and beat Ohio State, that they would be happy with that. They wouldn't be. It's not. I mean, that in that game, sure, they'd be happy to spoil Ohio State's season, but you'd rather be in the position where you have something at stake more than just beating a rival. That's the whole thing.
And you got to keep in mind too, when Charles Woodson was here, the team was very good.
Right.
They weren't in that position. They were all 3 years he was here. They were a very good team. They they won the national championship, and they beat Ohio State all 3 years. So it's easy, I think, for him to say this type of thing because obviously he was a very good player. That program was successful when he was here. They beat Ohio State when he was here. So for him to look back and say, well, I don't feel like these guys put an emphasis on this week. It's easy. He was there. It certainly is a different time and era, but he's also speaking from an era, a certain platform, a higher platform.
And Woodson is from Ohio.
He is.
So, I was just recently talking to a former Michigan basketball player from Indiana, and he was telling me, you come to Michigan, and no matter what sport you play, I think they tell you, we hate Ohio State and we hate Michigan State. And he kind of questioned it, like, well, why? Why do we hate them? He's from Indiana. He's like, I want to really beat IU and Purdue. Right. So for him, that's what it's about. And I think that's, it's going to be different for different players where they're from. For many of the in-state kids, that Michigan State game, they say, is the most physical, hardest hitting game of the year. But yeah, for someone like Woodson, who used to hear about it, and I'm sure still does hear about it from many of his hometown friends and family. When Michigan loses Ohio State, that game means more for him. So
it makes me wonder too, and we didn't get a chance to ask Charles about this, but obviously he played in a different era. Nowadays, and this has been brought up in other sports before in the NBA, and about rivalries and feuds and everything else. Nowadays, it seems like, and this is my perception, maybe you guys disagree, but guys are much more, they're more close-knit nowadays. They know each other from recruiting. They went to the same camps together. So there's almost that they're almost afraid, and I say afraid, but there's that level of, they don't want to criticize someone. They don't want to, talk trash to someone maybe because one of their best friends are over there. Maybe one of their old high school teammates are playing for that team. So it almost seems like nowadays, players, I don't say they're all buddy, but, there's that, they're afraid to talk about trash to other players.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a little more camaraderie, it seems, than there used to be. I don't know. There does seem to be more of that emphasis, that premium put on the game from Michigan's rivals.
Sure.
You see it from Michigan State too. D'Antonio certainly.
And Michigan's been largely successful against them too.
They circle that game. You remember Jim Tressel's famous speech when he was hired. You're going to be proud of these guys, and however many days. It was. That seems to be the game, and for Michigan, it's not. But like you said, right now is not the time to It's fine for a former player to make a guarantee or whatever, but
I found it interesting. He poked obviously Rich Rodriguez, and he did Brady Hoke to some degree too. But it just, if you recall when Brady Hoke was first introduced as the coach here, he was the one that referred to Ohio State as Ohio. That kind of slap in the face type thing where we're not going to call them by their name, we're going to call them by the state. And Woodson said the same thing Saturday night. He says when he referred to Ohio State, he wouldn't refer to Ohio State by name. He kept calling them who. So he said, I'm done talking them by name. We don't say their name anymore. So there's certainly, it seems like the alums and the folks from that era maybe have put a premium on that game, and Woodson feels like it's not, they haven't put a premium on nades.
Yeah, these coaches that didn't beat Ohio State, they weren't beating other teams in the Big Ten at a high enough clip. I mean, that's usually what'll get you fired. A rare exception, you got John Cooper at Ohio State. I think he did really well against other teams, but couldn't beat Michigan, and that's why he was let go. But for the most part, if you're a good program, you're gonna hold your own. And I think that's what Michigan fans want. They want to hold their own against Ohio State. They don't feel entitled to rip off 13 out of 14 or whatever Ohio State's done to Michigan, but just be competitive every year and win your share of games.
And that was the thing Woodson mentioned. I asked him, like, well, what gives you confidence that this team this year can beat this Ohio State team? And he made the comment that the last few years he didn't think there was much of a talent discrepancy. He just felt like because guys weren't putting a premium on the game and weren't emphasizing it, they weren't able to finish. Now you can disagree with that. Some of these games where they the scores are a little different. Last year Michigan held its own and played well for the most part. But again, that went back to his point that they're not emphasizing this game in this week like he used to do. You can agree or disagree with that or whatever, but that's how Charles felt. And Charles Woodson is one person who hasn't been afraid to speak his opinion in recent years. Take it or leave it.
Sure. Any other highlights from the event? I mean, we saw photos from our own Mike Mulholland of Jim Harbaugh throwing a football into the stands, and then I saw a tweet that implied he was just chucking these things all over the place to unsuspecting attendees.
There was a football toss as part of the auction. So it started with $10,000 football tosses, so you can get a signed football by Harbaugh and Carr and a couple other folks, and Harbaugh and I think John Navarro was there. John O'Corn was throwing balls in the crowd. So folks, they would literally ask people if they wanted a football. If you agreed to pay $10,000, you would stand up, and Harbaugh or one of the other folks available would throw a football to you. Now that amount decreases and went on. I think they started at 10, went to 5, went to 2,500. I think they went down to 1,000. But so many footballs were thrown. I'd say more than a couple dozen. It was a 20-minute thing. Harbaugh did break some glass. He did hit some people in the face because people weren't able to catch it or missed catching it. He almost took one of the screens down that was hanging above from the ceiling. So it was an interesting night, and then at the very end, yes, he wanted to go deep and have someone throw him the football. He stood in the middle of the room where the plates and the silverware was set up. The folks working the event were trying to clean the tables off, and Harbaugh, he caught the football but went back and landed on the table, broke a table and broke some glass and everything else.
You should definitely tell he still loves chucking the pigskin around. Whether you're in Paris taking videos, he just always warm-ups.
He's like a kid in a candy store out there. He can't get enough of it. So it was a fun night. It was lengthy, but like I said, they raised a lot of money. A lot of good was done. A lot of fun was had. And then we actually, we got some news out of it too with Woodson's comments, and he praised Shea Patterson too, which I thought was interesting. He had watched some tape of him. He likes him. Obviously, he wasn't ready to anoint him as a starter because that's not his job. But yeah, we got some interesting comments on the whole thing too.
Yeah, we'll have a story up in a little bit about some of the auction items too. It was interesting what they went for, a lot. I mean, the chance to meet and greet Don Brown, defensive coordinator, went for $4,500.
He's a popular guy.
That's a lot. I mean, all 10 assistant coaches were on there.
Yeah.
Some a couple hundred. I think Jay Harbaugh was up there. But Don Brown, $4,500.
There was one live auction item. It was a trip to a golf course, I think, in Virginia. They were promoting it as the course that Justin Verlander plays. I don't know the details. You can probably go back and look, but it went for $40,000. Someone paid $40,000 for it. So a lot of money was raised, and a lot of things were put up. There was, I think, a week. One of the Robert Weisner, one of the regents at U of M, put his apartment in Paris up for a week.
Yeah, saw that.
That went for a lot of money too. So they raised a lot of money. There were a lot of cool items too.
Yeah, sounds like a great event, obviously, and like you said, we learned some things. There's baseball. That's what's happening in the Michigan sports world. The NBA draft combine just ended. We learned Mo Wagner has very large hands. We confirmed that. I guess we already knew that. We probably hadn't reported it yet on this podcast, but I can confirm large hands. And we've got now 10 days before the deadline for players to withdraw their names, underclassmen who have not signed an agent. And among them, of course, is Michigan's Charles Matthews. One would think he would return based on draft projections, which he typically does not appear on either of the two rounds for the draft, the 60 picks. Wagner, on the other hand, is sneaking into the first round on some of these projections.
Keep in mind, too, if he does end up in the first round, it's more money than in guaranteed money.
It's guaranteed money, yes. I think, probably in a future podcast we can address this in that, recent years, even the second round has come into now a lot of guaranteed contracts. I think I saw one study, if you're in the top 10 or 15 picks of that second round, especially that first half of the second round, I think like 90% of the players over the last 5 or 6 years have signed at least a 1-year guaranteed contract. So a lot of the fans who say, well, if he doesn't go first round, he made a huge mistake. it's not necessarily true anymore.
Right.
You know, it's not 100% guaranteed. It's not going to be as much, but it's still, you can still, you know, sign a contract. I think for a lot of these players outside of those first lottery, we'll call it, it's about where you go. So important to go to a place that, you know, truly values you, you fit, and you can you know, develop there.
Right.
There's a lot of dysfunctional franchises out there, or franchises that aren't as functional as others, we'll say.
And you've got to keep in mind, too, the NBA has put a premium in recent years in the Gatorade League now. You know, guys, you're starting to see more draft picks not only end up there, but spend most of their first season there. I can remember when I covered the Pistons 2 seasons ago now. Their first-round pick, Henry Ellenson, spent more time in the G League. He went 18th overall, I believe, in the first round. He spent more time in the G League than he did in games for the Pistons. So you're starting to see the teams utilize the G League a lot more, which I think plays a factor, too, in some of these guys' decisions of whether or not to stay or whatever.
And you can get your Pistons coverage from Ansar Kahn at MLive, the other Kahn. He's got you covered.
But another U of M player that's about to be drafted in the hockey world, the NHL draft, is Quinn Hughes, who was the only college player to compete on Team USA in the World Championships, and I think he fared pretty well. Had 2 assists and was a +4, and the USA won bronze medal, beat Canada for the bronze, and I think that definitely helped his draft stock. I mean, you're talking about probably a top 5 pick now in June's draft.
I was going to say that draft is right around the same time as the NBA,
so
right?
Late June. So he did. I mean, probably will stay at Michigan for another year. I mean, he's still only 18 years old, but our teams are really liking his potential. So.
All right. Well, we got some puck talk in there as promised. For Ryan and Aaron, I'm Andrew. Thank you for listening to the Wolverine Confidential Podcast.